The night sky has always been a canvas of mystery, a place where countless stories begin and end in silence. For centuries, people have looked up and wondered, are we truly alone? Sometimes the darkness answers with strange lights, shapes that defy logic, and shadows that seem alive. From the quiet deserts of New Mexico to the sleepless streets of New York, UFO sightings have ignited fear and fascination. Some call them secret military crafts. Others believe they are visitors from beyond our world, watching us, studying us. But what if the truth is stranger than anything we can imagine? What if the skies above hold not just machines, but intentions, messages left for those brave enough to see? In this story, we dive into two chilling encounters: a silent, hovering craft captured on film in the deserts of New Mexico, and the terrifying abduction of Linda Cortile, a woman who claims she was taken from her own home in the heart of New York City. Both events remain unsolved, their mysteries growing deeper with every passing year. Prepare yourself. The answers are not simple, and the questions may stay with you long after the story ends. In the silent expanse of the New Mexico desert, where the horizon stretches endlessly and the stars burn like icy flames, something unexplainable once unfolded. The air that night was still, carrying only the faint scent of dry earth and distant sagebrush. A group of men, armed with cameras and curiosity, had gathered to film the starry sky. They expected nothing but the usual night canvas, until it appeared. Out of the void, a luminous shape glided effortlessly across the dark horizon. It was smooth, metallic, and glowing faintly as if lit from within by a cold, alien energy. There were no wings cutting through the air, no hum of engines, no smoke trailing behind it. It moved with a precision that mocked the very laws of gravity, drifting silently like a phantom. The man holding the camera struggled to steady his breath, his heart pounding in disbelief as he captured every frame of this eerie dance in the sky. Then, without warning, the object stopped. It hovered in one place with unnatural stillness, as though the night itself was holding its breath. For a moment, time felt suspended. Every insect chirp and distant wind seemed to fade into silence. Was this a secret aircraft born from a hidden government project? Was it a prototype of some unknown power? Or was it a visitor from beyond the stars, watching humanity with quiet curiosity? No official explanation ever came. No scientist stepped forward with answers. The footage remains a riddle, an unblinking eye in the sky that left more questions than it ever intended to answer. For the people of New Mexico, it became another whispered tale, a spectral warning from the heavens, a reminder that the desert sky hides more than stars. The scene then shifts, leaving behind the empty deserts and crossing 2,000 miles to the beating heart of Manhattan, New York. It was November 1989, a night coated in icy winds and the hum of a city that never sleeps. But high above the noise and the neon lights, in a quiet 12th-floor apartment, an event was unfolding that would soon become one of the most disturbing alien abduction stories ever told. Linda Cortile, later known as Linda Napolitano, lay in bed next to her sleeping husband. The clock read 3 a.m. when an unfamiliar sensation began to crawl through her body. It started at her feet, a dull tingling that quickly turned to numbness. It crept upward, consuming her legs, her chest, until she was trapped in her own skin, unable to move. The room felt charged, heavy, as if the air itself had become alive with invisible currents. Linda's eyelids flickered open, and then she saw them. They stood beside her bed, silent and pale, with heads larger than any human's and eyes like black pools of glass, reflecting her fear. 4, maybe 5 figures, all identical, all unmoving except for the subtle shift of their weight. They did not walk. They glided. There was no sound, no breath, no whisper, only the suffocating stillness of their presence. Linda's mind screamed for her husband, but her lips refused to move. Her voice was trapped, her body frozen. In the eerie silence, she felt something deeper than fear. She felt observed, examined, as if every secret in her mind had been laid bare. Linda's breath quickened, but her body refused to obey. Her mind screamed in terror, yet no sound escaped her lips. The numbness had reached her neck, her jaw, her tongue. She tried to roll her eyes toward her husband, lying motionless beside her, but he did not stir. It was as if the entire apartment had been swallowed by a deep, unnatural silence. Then came the voice, not from outside, but inside her mind. "Be quiet." The words were soft, yet they carried the weight of absolute command. Panic flared through her veins. She tried to resist, to scream, but her body betrayed her. A sudden weightlessness took hold of her. Linda felt her back lift from the bed. She was floating, as if unseen hands were pulling her upward. Her heart pounded in her ears, but there was no sound beyond the hollow thrum of her own fear. The figures surrounded her. Their movements were smooth, almost liquid, their black eyes glinting like wet stone under an invisible light. She passed above her sleeping husband, through the hallway, and toward the window at the far end of the apartment. She expected the glass to stop her, but the blue light enveloping her body grew brighter, shimmering like the surface of a bubble. She floated through the glass as if it wasn't there, through the steel safety bars, and into the cold New York air. Below her, the city stretched like a living creature, its veins lit by streetlights and the occasional honk of a distant taxi. Yet above, the sky was unnaturally still. There it was, the craft. A perfect saucer shape, hovering no more than a few feet away. Its surface was silver but fluid, reflecting the lights of the city like ripples on a pond. The blue aura wrapped around Linda like a cocoon, drawing her closer. Her body slipped into the ship without resistance. The moment she crossed the threshold, the air changed. It smelled metallic, sharp like heated steel. The interior was smooth, seamless, without bolts or seams, like a single piece of material sculpted by something beyond human engineering. A corridor stretched before her, walls lined with panels that pulsed faintly with pale light. Sliding doors opened and closed as the beings guided her forward, their long fingers brushing the air but never touching her. Their communication was silent, yet she could feel their thoughts pressing against her mind, alien and cold. Then the room appeared, a bright, sterile chamber dominated by a long metallic table. The sight of it made her chest tighten with panic. Her mind shouted in protest, "No, I don't want to be here." The beings paused as if they understood. One of them tilted its head slightly as though studying her fear. A hand, thin, bone-white, touched her cheek. Another gripped her head as a long, slender tool appeared from nowhere. It gleamed under the light as they carefully inserted it into her right nostril. A sharp pressure jolted her awake with a pain so sudden that she cried out in her mind. The voice returned, calm yet firm, "Just for a visit." Then, as abruptly as it began, it ended. The light dimmed, the beings stepped back. Linda blinked and found herself lying in her bed again. Her heart pounded wildly. The room was exactly as she had left it. Her husband lay beside her, still asleep, breathing slowly as if nothing had happened. Linda stumbled to her children's room. Her sons were asleep too, their faces peaceful and undisturbed, no matter how she shook them. Her hands trembled. The night was silent again, but nothing felt the same. In the days following that terrifying night, Linda felt as if her world had cracked open. Sleep no longer brought rest. Every shadow in her apartment seemed to hold a memory of those dark, unblinking eyes. Her children's laughter sounded distant. as though a part of her had been left behind somewhere between the walls of that silver craft and the cold night air. When she stumbled upon the writings of Bud Hopkins, a man known for investigating alien abductions, Linda felt an unsettling connection. Hopkins had spent years piecing together stories of missing time, unexplained scars, and people who claimed to have been taken by forces beyond human understanding. His books, like Missing Time and Intruders, spoke to her deepest fears, describing experiences eerily similar to her own. Unable to carry the weight of her secret any longer, Linda reached out to Hopkins. Their first conversation was quiet, tentative. Linda's voice trembled as she described the pale figures, the blue light, the strange tool forced into her nostril. Hopkins listened without interruption. He didn't dismiss her. He didn't laugh. He simply asked questions, the kind that cut straight into the heart of her fear. "Did you lose any time?" he asked gently. "Yes," Linda whispered. "When I opened my eyes, I was back in bed, but it felt like hours had passed." Hopkins had heard this before. In case after case, abductees reported the same pattern. The paralysis, the silent figures, the bright light, and the strange medical procedures. He asked Linda if she would consider hypnosis to recover the missing fragments of her memory. After some hesitation, she agreed. Under hypnosis, Linda's words painted a nightmare more vivid than any dream. She described floating above the city, the cold wind against her face, and the way the lights of Manhattan blurred beneath her like a living map. She spoke of the long hallway inside the craft, the sliding doors that opened with no sound, and the beings who communicated without words, yet filled her head with thoughts she couldn't understand. Hopkins, always meticulous, began gathering every piece of evidence he could find. He reached out to other witnesses in the area, hoping someone else had seen the strange lights or heard the hum of the craft. To his surprise, two men, who identified themselves only as Richard and Dan, came forward with a story that mirrored Linda's account. They claimed they had been on duty as security officers, escorting a high-profile official near the Brooklyn Bridge the very night Linda was taken. From their vehicle, they saw something that defied every law of nature. They watched, frozen, as a woman floated from a high-rise window surrounded by blue light and was pulled into a hovering saucer. In their letters to Hopkins, both men admitted they were shaken to their core. "We can't unsee it," one of them wrote. "Her face, so pale, so lifeless, it haunts me." Hopkins had heard countless abduction tales before, but this case felt different. Here were multiple witnesses, each describing the same impossible event. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, yet each answer only led to deeper questions. Richard and Dan were not ordinary witnesses. They were men trained to protect, men who lived their lives watching for threats, not for visions that shattered reality. Yet on that cold November night, what they saw by the Brooklyn Bridge haunted them in ways they could never escape. Their first letter to Bud Hopkins was short, almost hesitant, as if they were afraid that putting the words on paper would make the memory real. "We were on duty," Richard wrote, his handwriting sharp and uneven. "We saw a woman floating out of a window, 12 floors up, surrounded by a blue light. It wasn't a trick of the eyes, it wasn't a dream, it was real." Dan, in his own letter, confessed that he hadn't slept in days. "When I close my eyes, I see her face, white, blank. The way her arms hung at her sides like she was asleep. I feel sick when I think about it. I feel like I should have done something, but what could I do? You don't point a gun at something that's not from this world." When Bud listened to the first audio tape they sent, he was struck by the raw fear in their voices. Richard's voice trembled as he described the hovering craft. "It wasn't like anything we've ever seen. It made no sound, just this low hum that you could feel more than hear. And then she was just gone, pulled inside like the air swallowed her. Hopkins soon learned that Richard and Dan were not just random bystanders. They were escorting a high-ranking official that night. A detail that would later reveal an even deeper layer to this story. The men admitted they couldn't shake the guilt. They began following Linda from a distance, unsure if they were trying to protect her or trying to convince themselves that she was real. "We're not crazy," Dan said on a later tape. "She's real." That night was real, but I can't stop thinking, what if they come for her again? What if they come for us? Their paranoia grew. They parked near Linda's building, watching the windows, waiting for something, anything. That might prove they weren't losing their minds. Richard confessed in one letter that he felt compelled to see her face again, just to know he hadn't imagined it. But this obsession was tearing them apart. "I don't know what's happening to me," Dan wrote. "I dream about the lights, about that cold wind. Sometimes I wake up and I swear I can hear her voice calling me like she's still out there in that blue light." To Hopkins, these letters and tapes weren't just evidence. They were a cry for help from men who had witnessed something beyond human comprehension. The deeper he dug, the clearer it became that this case was not just about Linda. It was about the way these encounters could fracture the human mind, breaking it like glass under pressure. The story took an even stranger turn when Linda, under hypnosis, began to speak of a vision so vivid and unsettling that Bud Hopkins himself paused during the session. Her voice grew soft and distant, as if she were seeing through a veil of memories. "I'm on a beach," she whispered. "The sand is cold and wet under my feet. There's a light blue and shimmering, and I hear them, the beings. They're digging, their long hands clawing into the sand, searching for something beneath the surface. I can feel their urgency." Hopkins asked her what she was holding. Linda's hands twitched as she answered, "A fish. It's dead, heavy in my palms. I don't know why it's here, but I feel like I'm supposed to show it to someone." This memory connected to a letter that Richard and Dan had sent weeks earlier. They too described a vision, one that had haunted them since that November night. Their account was eerily similar. After the UFO vanished, they found themselves on a stretch of beach, disoriented, as if transported in a blink of time. Dan wrote, "We saw her there, standing barefoot in the sand, holding up a fish like some kind of warning. The aliens were around her, and when she looked at us, her eyes were blank, as if she wasn't fully herself." One phrase in particular echoed through both their accounts. The beings called her the Lady of the Sands. What did it mean? Why would they give her such a name? Hopkins could not find any cultural or historical link to the phrase. Some believed it was a title, a recognition that Linda had been chosen or marked. Others suggested it was symbolic. Perhaps the beach represented a threshold, a place between worlds. Richard, in another tape, sounded shaken as he recalled the sight. "She looked like a messenger. I know how crazy that sounds. But the way they surrounded her, the way the wind blew across the shore, it felt like we were seeing something sacred and terrifying." Linda herself didn't understand the vision. "I'm not special," she told Hopkins during another interview. "I'm just a woman. Why would they call me that?" But her voice wavered as if some part of her feared the answer. The obsession deepened for Richard and Dan. The more they tried to ignore the memory, the stronger it became. They began to wonder if Linda knew more than she was telling, if she carried secrets she herself couldn't fully recall. Dan's final words in one of his letters lingered in Hopkins' mind. "If she is the Lady of the Sands, then she's part of something far bigger than we can understand. And if that's true, maybe we're not just witnesses, we're pieces of it too. The sky above us is vast, silent, and full of secrets. From the unexplained footage over New Mexico to Linda Cortile's chilling encounter in New York, these stories remind us that there are forces we still cannot comprehend. Were these events the result of advanced technology hidden from the public, or are they proof of beings from beyond the stars? What do you believe? Could there be a truth far stranger than we imagine, waiting to be uncovered? If you have your own thoughts, theories, or experiences, share them in the comments below. We want to hear what you think. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to X-Site, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of the incredible mysteries we uncover. The truth may be closer than you think. Keep watching the skies.